मीडियम ऐप के जन संवाद के इस एपिसोड में आप सभी का स्वागत है। मैं प्रोफेसर शिवाजी सरकार आज आपसे एक बहुत क्रिटिकल सवाल लेके आया हूं और उसका जो डिस्कशन है वो आपको दिखाऊंगा। आप इसे देखें, सब्सक्राइब करें, शेयर करें। सवाल क्या है? सवाल है एक नए प्राइवेसी बिल का। और वो प्राइवेसी अगर कोई पत्रकार उसको तोड़ता है या कोई भी तोड़ता है, कोई भी आम आदमी तोड़ता है, तो उसके ऊपर 250 से 500 करोड़ का दावा ठोका जाएगा और नहीं दिया जाएगा, तब सोच सकते हैं उसके साथ क्या होगा। इसी सिलसिले में कल प्रेस क्लब ऑफ इंडिया में एक वार्ता हुई। उसका जो पूरा डिटेल्स है वो हम आपको दिखा रहे हैं और उसी से आपको सारे प्रश्नों के सवाल भी मिलेंगे, जवाब भी मिलेंगे कि प्राइवेसी तो होनी चाहिए। और प्राइवेसी पर आजकल डाका भी पड़ रहा है। सारे कॉरपोरेट ऐप बना के आपके प्राइवेसी के आपके सारे, यहां तक कि यूबर ओला जो है वो उसको आपके घर के बारे में जानने की क्या जरूरत है? पूर्वकता आपके कॉन्टैक्ट जब तक आप नहीं देंगे तब तक आप गाड़ी जो है बुक नहीं कर सकते। ये अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ा धंधा हो गया है और लोगों की जो प्राइवेसी है, उनकी जो बेसिक प्राइवेट सिक्योरिटी है, उससे समझौता किया जा रहा है। उसी पर ये चर्चा है।
That anyone who collects any personal information becomes a data fiduciary. So that means almost everyone sitting over here will become a data fiduciary under the data protection law. And the data fiduciary has to make sure they have obligations. They have to make sure that they have to take consent. They have to get a form signed from every person whose data they are collecting or processing, and get consent, purpose and time consent. Now, if this is not done, then a complaint can be raised against them. So the government can file a complaint, any individual can file a complaint, and the complaint will go to a data protection board. It's like a body, regulatory body that is set up under the data protection law. And this data protection board is completely controlled by the central government, because the central government is saying they will decide how many members the board will have. They will decide who is a member and chairperson of the board. They will decide the removal of these people, the salaries, everything will be decided by the central government. So this is almost like a central government department. The complaint will go to them, and this body has the power to impose penalties up to 250 crores on every case of violation, which can be doubled to 500 crores. So this body, which is pretty much a central government body now, will have the power to impose penalties up to 500 crore rupees on any journalist, on any individual, on anyone who collects or processes personal data. So this is a draconian law. What we are seeing is the potential to weaponize this law to actually stop any dissenting voices, any kind of critical reportage, because there is no exemption for journalists. Unlike other laws in the world, there is no exemption for journalists under this law. But the final catch is that the central government under this law has the power to decide who is and who is not a data fiduciary. So the central government will decide whether UIDAI, which has all our Aadhaar data, is exempt under the law. They will have the power to decide whether any big company is exempt from various provisions of this law and who is covered. So the fear is very real that anyone who dares to say anything which is inconvenient to this ruling party, whoever that might be, they could be targeted under this law, and this will be a huge blow to media freedom, to a free press, and to the citizens of India, who will A, lose the right to information, and B, under section 36 of the law, will have to give information to the central government any time that it summons any information. I will stop here and we'll hear both from Apar and Amrita and then maybe some questions.
Thank you, Anjali. What you spoke about is something quite shocking about the 500 crore thing against even an individual, and government deciding who's that person from whom the fine would be taken from. So this is something, it's not like fully controlled by political power of the government of the day. So that's one thing. And the other thing I suddenly remembered, we had a opposition Congress, this alliance press conference here, where the Gaurav Gogoi, who was the member of the, I think, the JPC or something like that. So he had spoken something very interesting. He said that in their suggestion, when they saw the bill last, it had mentioned that the journalists are going to be exempted of it. And now in the bill that has been passed in Parliament, we don't see that. That is gone. So that is something quite worrying. That means it is not an oversight, and what we understand is like really thought out kind of a step. So I would like to bring you in, Apar, because most importantly, the government, the minister concerned, has been saying that this bill is also hinged on the Supreme Court's order that privacy is a fundamental right. So how is it, what is the government's argument, and is the government correct about it?
Thank you so much for inviting me here today. My name is Apar Gupta. I'm representing the Internet Freedom Foundation, but even otherwise, as a lawyer, I've been involved in cases regarding the right to privacy in India. This includes the Justice Puttaswamy decision, in which the Supreme Court, a 9-judge bench, unanimously reaffirmed the fundamental right to privacy and held that it is linked to all our fundamental rights. It came after the Union government's challenge to the status of privacy as a fundamental right under the Constitution itself. And this is important to note, given that the government was a contesting rather than a consensual party to the right to privacy when it did emerge. Now, if we read the Justice Puttaswamy judgment, it has multiple opinions authored by the judges of the Supreme Court, in which the opinion of Justice Chandrachud has the signatures of 4 other judges. It states that the right to privacy is a complementary right to all other fundamental rights, and it does not only operate on the spectrum of liberty, which means that the government cannot force us to do certain things, but it is also linked to our individual autonomy, which means who we are as human beings, and will also relate to domains, for instance, our diet, our choice of attire, our relationships. It will also relate to dignity, which means that information about a person may not be disclosed without their consent, or they are entitled to certain information which may also be received from the government, which then ensures their recognition. So the underpinning of the fundamental right to privacy is liberty, which is a form of freedom, autonomy, which means personhood, who you are, and dignity, which we all need in a democratic society. The Supreme Court's opinion then goes on to state that the state needs to do 2 things. The first is that it needs to proactively restrain itself from infringing on our privacy, and the second is it needs to make a law or make amendments to certain laws in which the right to privacy is safeguarded. And here the government, prior to this decision, had established the Justice Shri Krishna Committee, which was involved in the drafting process of a data protection bill. The Justice Shri Krishna Committee gave its report after the Puttaswamy judgment. 2017, the Puttaswamy judgment comes in August. In 2018, the report by Justice Shri Krishna is given, and a draft bill is also appended to that report. And I'm reading here from the Editors Guild's representation to the Learned Minister, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, dated February 16, 2024. I would urge all of you as fellow journalists to go through this representation which was sent to the minister, which in detail charts out the history of the right to privacy and how it is a complement to your activities as a journalist and what a data protection law should ideally look like. So, here the Editors Guild very clearly states that the 2018 bill recommended by Justice Shri Krishna, the Justice Shri Krishna committee was constituted by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. It was not a committee which in any sense could be termed as being something outside the branch of government itself. And what does this committee state in a draft bill? It says that there needs to be a specific exemption for the phrase journalistic purpose and goes on to define it as any activity intended towards the dissemination through print, electronic or any other media of factual reports, analysis, opinions, views or documentaries regarding number one, news, recent or current events, or two, any other information that the data fiduciary believes the public or any significantly discernible class of the public to have an interest in. This same position was repeated in the JPC's recommendation and also is present in global statutes and regulations such as Europe's GDPR or even Singapore's data protection bill. So, the position which comes through is that the Data Protection Act, which was passed in 2023 in August, within about 10 days, both through the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, with inadequate debate in which several members of opposition were suspended, does not have this exemption. It's important for us to understand that this goes above and beyond the amendment to the RTI Act. The RTI Act is one powerful central basis of how journalists get information all over our country. It's not only restricted to what happens here in Delhi. And beyond the RTI Act, journalists sometimes do not need to file RTIs. They are on the spot of events. They are talking to people as events are happening, unfolding. And each time they may be referring to incidents, for instance, a road accident, not only a road construction. They may be referring to any kind of religious procession. They may be referring to any kind of social event. Under the Data Protection Act, as it stands today, a journalist today now needs to do the following if it is put into effect as per its current provisions. Number one, seek consent. How do you seek consent? You as a journalist will need to tell a person, do you consent to your information, name, identity, location, relative details, age, being there in my copy? One. Second, the purpose I will be using your information for also needs to be there in that consent notice. So, for instance, if you're doing an interview with 10 to 20 people and your story changes as you're talking to more and more people, of course the purpose from when you talk to the first person to when you talk to the 20th person changes. This makes this entire law completely unpractical even for the largest publication houses and media empires in this country. Now you would ask me, what is the purpose of this law? Why is the exemption not there? And here the government has come out with a defense recently. Excuse me, I'm recovering from the Delhi flu, if we can call it the Delhi flu now. So, the purpose of this law, as explained by the minister after the conference by opposition members in the press club, has been recourse to certain provisions of the Digital Data Protection Act, which I think is a misdirection. It is a reference to section 3, which says that the law will not apply to any information which is made public, but let us read it a little closely. I request for your attention and patience here. It states, the Act will not apply to 1. Personal data processed by any individual for any personal or domestic purpose. Journalism by its very nature will not fall within these categories. Number 2. Personal data that is made or caused to be made publicly available by A. the data principle, which means not you, it means the person itself to whom this data relates. For instance, if Apar Gupta itself wants to publish something about Apar Gupta, I am the data principal, it's not you. B, any other person who is under any obligation, under any law for the time being in force in India to make such personal data publicly available. Again, this is inapplicable to all of you. So according to me, the defense which has been given by the government is a misdirection. What is required today is a legislative amendment to the Digital Data Protection Act in line with the recommendations made by the Editors Guild. The government needs to clearly display good intent, follow all the proper recommendations which have been made by its own expert committee, by the Joint Parliamentary Committee, and when it withdrew the Data Protection Bill on the floor of the Parliament, pursuant to the recommendations of the Joint Parliamentary Committee, it committed to studying its recommendations and introducing a new law. As per me, these recommendations nowhere recommend that there shouldn't be a journalistic exception from the Data Protection Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Apar. You mentioned about the Editors Guild memorandum to the Minister. The Anand Nag, President of Editors Guild, is here. So I would request Anand please to come here and talk about it.
Hi. Thanks, Sangeeta. Actually, Anjali and Apar have touched upon the core issues that we have raised, and thanks Apar for quoting from the statement and bringing it, sort of foregrounding it in this session. I'm just going to maybe add a thin layer because the substantive points have already been made. Essentially, what both Apar and Anjali have pointed out to the fact that because there is no journalistic exception, and because in effect it means that any journalist reporting on any person, whether political, whether business news, whether sports, whether even entertainment, whether even local reporting, essentially what the act sort of mandates us is we take permission from the person on whom we are reporting, we take permission on what we are reporting and how the data will be used, which means nothing other than being their PR agent, because they will dictate what you can write, how you can write, and the direction it will be written in. So the essence of the act is to convert every journalist into a PR agent of the person they are reporting on, thereby killing any effort of independent journalism. The irony, or the very sad irony here, is that this was done at the same time when the government, soon after this Data Protection Act was passed, or around that same time, they sought to also convert their own PR agency into a fact-checking agency. The PIB, which is the mandate, is that they are a PR agency of governments, efforts, policies, was given inordinate power to be the sole arbiter of what is correct, what is fake, what is misleading, what is false, with powers to order content takedown. Obviously, we challenge that along with other organizations, and thankfully the Bombay High Court has stayed that. But the government is hell-bent on converting its PR agency into a regulatory body. At the same time, it is hell-bent on converting every journalist into a PR agent, which is what we need to fight out. Journalistic exception is important because this is also violation of our fundamental right to occupation. Article 19(1)(g), I think, gives everybody a right to occupation. If our right to occupation is taken away, this is a clear breach of our fundamental rights. At the same time, not to mention the citizens' right to know. 19(1)(a) itself has been taken away because as journalists we are supposed to report on information that the so-called data principle does not want us to publish. We become data fiduciary. Our hands have been cut down to report on data principles. Therefore, that information that should be out in public domain will not be out, and people's right to know is being violated. So on two counts, 19(1) is being violated. It is against basic structure of the Constitution. It is against our right to work. It is converting us into a PR agents. and we have to, of course, work with the ministry to change it, to ensure that these exceptions are part of the draft rules. And of course, if that doesn't happen, then we have to pursue other legal options.
Thank you so much. I mean, like the most important thing now is like what you said is taking perhaps the legal route if the. But our first attempt would be to seek an appointment with the minister concerned and express our concerns as journalists. So that would be our first step. And thank you also for holding up the fact that it is actually going against, the act is actually going against our right to work, our fundamental right to work. And and also reducing journalistic work to PR, public relations. So that's something very, very important that you have held up. So I'd like to go to Amrita just to what any other points that you want to add. But I also have a request. I just want to ask you particularly one question, which is that has been in my mind. That somewhere I've heard that whatever data we have are there in public domain now, the existing data, they would also come under this act. Is that true? And if it is true, then how our work is going to get affected? For instance, our electoral bond data and all. Will you be able to go back to it? Will you be able to use that? There are so many other data sets available in public domain. So please address that question too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you to all the organizations that are organizing this important thing, because really this is going to be a huge blow to democracy and to the ability of citizens and media to seek accountability. So in fact, I thought I'll talk in the context of electoral bonds itself. Now, if you look at the judgment very heavily relies on deliberations and correspondence that was brought out through the RTI Act, which actually showed which all functionaries opposed the electoral bond scheme and on what basis. And that forms the crux of that judgment, where the judges say that, look, you have 2 RBI governors on record saying don't do this, this will lead to black money, this will create new channels of quid pro quo, this will increase this whole issue of crony capitalism. So that's a very, very crucial aspect of that judgment. The other crucial aspect of the judgment is the whole correspondence between the Election Commission of India and the Finance Ministry. Election Commission of India is on record saying that how can we regulate political parties if we don't know where their money is coming from. Now, each of these correspondence carries personal information. It has the name of the official who's writing that letter. It has a response saying that, okay, your secretary said this to me, but I believe this is how we see it and therefore we oppose it. Now imagine getting a letter in which all the names are redacted and you only have the text of that letter. That letter wouldn't be of any use. The Supreme Court relied on file notings which were recorded by individual officers, where actually there's a file noting in which the Secretary of Finance Ministry says that RBI has raised some very, very important questions, but they've done it at a point when the finance bill is already printed. So we really can't take cognizance, we are going to go ahead with it. Now imagine not having access to which official said this, because you will now not have access to these. And the Supreme Court largely relies on this correspondence on questions of who supported the electoral bond scheme and who opposed it to finally come to their judgment. Today, that information is not going to come out through the RTI Act. Another crucial thing that came out through the RTI Act at that point was that through a file noting, we got to know that it was the Prime Minister in conversation with the Secretary Finance who actually vetoed the idea of making the scheme public and seeking comments. There is no way we will now get to know who all were in that meeting. We still might get some minutes or some conclusion, but you're not going to get to know who all attended that meeting. Now let's say, suppose today let's say the Data Protection Act is in force. Let's say we have again an electoral bond scheme 2.0. Once again, let's say the Supreme Court strikes it down and the Supreme Court directs the SBI that place all that data in the public domain. First of all, SBI will fight back saying that there is a data protection law, therefore how can we overcome that? Supreme Court might say, no, we are the highest constitutional court of the country, we are directing you to do it. Even once the data comes out in the public domain, you will not be able to process that data. So even data that's publicly available, and what is it that the work that all the media and the journalists did? They picked up the information of who purchased electoral bonds. Then they went on to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs website and they looked up that in those companies, who are the directors, who are the people, and then they tried to relate it to news items at that point. So for instance, that one big pharmaceutical company in which the director was picked up by the ED, then they gave some money through electoral bonds, eventually he got bail, he became a prover in the whole liquor scam. All of this was possible because you connected so many different public databases together. You picked up something, you put it in an Excel file, then you picked up that other data, put it in an Excel file and did a process of matching. This will directly get hit by the Data Protection Act. So there is no way, first of all, would you have a judgment like this, because the basis of that judgment relies on correspondence which has personal information, and even if this data were to come out, there is no way that we would be able to process it or to use it or to publish it. Let's look at a few other examples. During the farmers' protests, the government said that we have held extensive consultations and we have spoken to people. These poor farmers are misinformed and therefore they don't know what they're saying. If you were to ask the question, who did you consult with? Who did you call for meetings? You're not going to get that information. That's personal information. After all, the question of who is somebody's name, somebody belonging to a union. So you're not going to get that kind of information. Let's even look at more recent events. The stampede at Mahakumbh or the stampede at the New Delhi railway station. Who are the people who died? Now, let's say you're not even filing an RTI. Let's say you're going and doing ground reporting. You're saying who are the people who are injured. I think there's a very big question mark that how are you collecting that personal information? How are you processing it? And you would be opening yourself and be liable to all of these. And I think somewhere what the government really wants when it comes to the question of accountability, and going back to the example that Anjali was saying of, who is the official who took a decision, or who is the official who sanctioned all these bridges which keep falling in Bihar, somewhere they don't want to now open up individual officers to accountability. They're happy if you say, oh, this particular PWD department is really bad, but not the names of secretaries, who sanctioned the coal mining, who allowed the forest to be cut, who did this, did that, and that question of who is what they're trying to stop. Another couple of points that I wanted to just add to this was also that if we look at the last 20 years, because the RTI Act came in 2005 and now we're sitting in 2025, there has not been a single instance where either the government or an information commissioner or a judge or an activist or any citizen has ever said that through the RTI Act sensitive personal information got disclosed, or such information got disclosed which shouldn't have come out in the public domain. So therefore, where is the justification for amending the law? As Apar already said, that the Puttaswamy judgment did not end up saying that amend the law. So therefore, there's absolutely no reason for amending the law. And what they've done while amending 81J is that they've also thrown out a very, very important proviso which actually said that a citizen's right to information is at par with that of Parliament or the Legislative Assembly. So the RTI has certain exemptions. So for instance, national security is one exemption, contempt of court, privacy, all of these. But at the bottom of it, it said, provided that nothing that can be denied to Parliament or legislature shall be denied to a citizen. In a sense saying that the accountability that the executive has towards MPs and MLAs, they must also have towards citizens. Now this particular proviso was applicable to all the provisions of section 8(1), and it was applicable to the question of national security and all of those, and they've done away with this, and to our mind it's completely illegal because you've done away with the provision that was not just attached to 81J. It's a very, very well thought out, extremely well thought out amendment. I think it's questions like who donated to PM Cares, who is authorizing PM Cares expenditure during Model Code of Conduct, where is that money going, who are the beneficiaries. I think these are the questions that the government does not want should come out, and that's why there's a very, very clear attack on this. I just wanted to read out one or two definitions, because yesterday we were doing a webinar and there were some journalists who had logged in, and there was a couple of them were saying, how can you say that it's applicable to us? So I'll just read out two definitions. So who is a data fiduciary? Data fiduciary means any person who alone or in conjunction with others determines the purpose and means of processing of data. So which means it's a person. So first of all, data protection is not just applicable to large companies or just to your media houses or to NGOs or anything. It will be applicable on each of us. Now the definition of person includes an individual. So literally if the two of us get together and say, okay, let's go there, one basti is getting demolished, let's go and write down the names of people who haven't got rehabilitation, two of us together become a data fiduciary. Processing means any kind of partly or wholly automated operation that you run on the data. And automated can simply mean if you tell Excel to do a summation, if you tell Excel to do an automatic numbering, if you tell Excel to do a pivot table. Frankly, if you take a PDF and convert it into a searchable form, that also will get covered under processing. So really it's quite clear that it's really an attack. I think it's an attack on anyone who they see as even citizen journalists, or people who we now see on YouTube, etc., who turn on their camera, start telling you what's happening somewhere, collecting data. And I think it's quite clear that if we just look at the context, that during the Aadhaar challenge, when the question was that how are you collecting data of 1.4 billion Indians, connecting it to everything under the sun, income tax, passport, driving license, ration card, property sale, property purchase, and then people said that where is the right to privacy? The Solicitor General of the government said citizens have no right to privacy. And during electoral bond, when the question was asked that who are the donors, the same government, the government's council said that people have no right to information. So I think they want to play on both these things, that when it suits them, they want to say you don't have a right to privacy, we can do what we want, and when it comes to accountability, they want to say you have no right to information. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita, for this. This is actually quite scary. I mean, after that, I have to now remind myself I am actually living in the mother of all democracies, and where we have a right to ask questions. So this is quite scary. And so we have amongst us all the organizing committee, the members of the, who are jointly organizing this open meeting. So I would request Sujata Madhav, President of DUJ, to please come and say something for us.
आपने ये देखा होगा, ये पूरा जो डिस्कशन है इसको आपने देखा, आपके मन में तमाम प्रश्न उठ रहे होंगे, इन प्रश्नों के जवाब आपको देने हैं, और इन प्रश्नों के जवाब देने ही नहीं है, इन प्रश्नों के साथ जो सुरक्षा के सारी प्रश्न जुड़े हुए हैं, उस पर आपको कानून मंत्रालय को लिखना है क्या क्या आपको गलत लग रहा है और क्या क्या परिवर्तन वो करें। जी हां, देश भर में प्राइवेसी के नाम पर हम कॉर्पोरेट की दूसरी लूट की क्या शुरुआत करें, या आपको सोचना है। आप जवाब देंगे कानून मंत्री को, कानून मंत्रालय को आप बताएंगे, आप सुरक्षित रहेंगे, आपके बच्चे सुरक्षित रहेंगे, पत्रकार सुरक्षित रहेंगे, तमाम प्रोफेशनल सुरक्षित रहेंगे। अन्यथा क्या होगा वो आप जब भुगतेंगे तभी आपको समझ में आएगा। आपने इस एपिसोड को देखा, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत आपको धन्यवाद। इसको देखें, शेयर करें, लाइक करें।